A very good morning. We're glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. The conversation right now is gonna focus on ourselves. Interesting there. Many times we amplify the voices and the issues of other people, other professionals, but we do understand that it is important to also take some time and throw the spotlight on journalists themselves in the conduct of their work and how exactly that goes on. Before I do a preamble of our discussion, allow me to welcome my colleague, my usual suspect, partner in crime. There is nyege going on in Jinja. And when I woke up and did the initial calls in the morning, producer, my colleague, and a few other people, hey, you guys, are we ready for today? They didn't respond as they do respond on a daily basis, and I feared, could these guys be in Jinja at nyege? I'm glad to see you, Priscilla.
Oh, wow. Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
You look nyege.
I look nyege. I'm nyege-nyegering it.
Okay, there you are.
Well, a good morning to you and all of you that have tuned in to Morning at NTV, the final edition for this particular week of September 2022. I am Priscilla Regina Naloga. Delightful to be in your company. And Chris, speaking of nyege, obviously it's the trending thing on all social media platforms, particularly Twitter and Instagram. If you just type in nyege, it's already buzzing with all sorts of comments, videos, expressions, and all. The Daily Monitor has not left it out either. Pictorial in the front page. Return of party. Thousands descend on Jinja as nyege starts. So this particular nyege is in the spotlight because of what had happened prior to its descending in Parliament, in the office of the Prime Minister. So we are waiting to see the evidence of immorality.
Interesting.
Evidence of children attending these things.
Really?
Yeah.
Evidence of what?
So that next time,
let's do justice to the gentleman in our midst. Exactly,
by the way, even right place.
Somebody might think we brought in an expert to help us go around nyege. Well, Mr. Muhumuza, a very good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
How are you? Yeah.
How do you rate the hula baloo and the everything, the noise around nyege, before we discuss what we're going to discuss?
Well, I'm not an outgoing person. I don't know, but clearly you can see there's, morals versus money.
Money.
Oh, yeah.
And we've chosen money.
Yeah. No. I don't think. I think you can strike a balance, which is what we've done. Because after all, I think there was a concert somewhere in Mbarara, and I saw more of a bigger nyege than what is going on.
And that is my argument right there. That is where I go like, no, but you guys, even last Friday we had the mini nyege in town here. So really, it must cut across whatever decisions would be, considered. Must cut across.
All right, no doubt about that. The journalists are there, and we'll be bringing you the pictorials and including the reports, everything that will be happening. NTV will be bringing you that. You can be rest assured to understand the perspective. But allow me bring you to justice and media reporting. What approaches can be adopted to ensure that those who report on the justice system, those who report in the courts of law, to help us understand how justice is dispensed, whether it is done promptly or equitably or fairly. There is a lot of that. And when reporters who do that are unable to tell these stories, then in a way I can say that justice is sometimes delayed and denied. So it's important that those who are at the helm of the judiciary ensure that reporters tell these stories as quickly and as correctly and accurately as possible. Mr. Muhumuza is going to help us understand what is on the ground. Just a preamble, while Uganda has progressively enjoyed a vibrant print and electronic media, enacted freedom of information laws, free speech faces serious constraints, and access to information is deliberately limited. There are pieces of legislation that tell journalists that you can access information when and how you want it, but it takes us ages to be able to get through to government officials and some of these individuals that are needed for comment. How are you facing the fire? Are you supported? Do you find it easy to access some of these government officials, judiciary, when you want information on the stories that you're pushing for?
No, of course, the hide and seek games cannot be talked about. You can't fail to talk about them.
That's right.
When you're discussing reporting justice and getting interviews from the government officials. When you have a story about this sensitive information, most likely you're going to have government officials give you all sorts of reasons not to be around. Some of the reasons legitimate, but we keep pushing. You know, like they say, Rome wasn't built in one day. You work today, tomorrow you don't work. It's just like that. So I think, like the challenges in any other sectors, reporting about accountability, reporting about justice is equally challenging. Yeah.
On a daily basis, when you go out there to pursue stories related to justice, how often do you draw the line between public interest, personal experiences? Because when you hear, for example, there are cases where you reach and you clearly see that a certain individual might actually not be guilty, but things are going against because the facts don't add up in his favor. How do you disengage from the reality of an individual who is finding themselves perhaps persecuted, and then you ensure you report the story as accurately without necessarily being emotional about it?
Yeah, professionalism. You've got to be professional because we didn't take an oath, but equally we somehow we have to do what is right. So
that's right.
I remember there's a time I went to, you know, when I'm off, like on leave, I tend to go to the villages, and you can go to a court maybe. And so there's this guy who had, you know, was accused of a crime, and he was in court, and you know, things happen in court very fast, and he didn't have a lawyer, and that's one of the other challenges. We don't have pro bono services across the country. So this guy was in court, and then he was asked to take a plea immediately. He somehow, I mean, acknowledged to have committed the crime, and all of a sudden he was convicted. So when that was done, we got out and they started asking what had happened. So I told them that the next thing is sentencing. So there is no information, especially on the side of our people, and we need to have these services, especially the access to information, people spread across the country, so that people can know, because these things are jargon, and they are difficult to understand, even to us, the reporters. Okay. So you talked about how do I strike a balance. I think it's about looking at doing the right thing. Sometimes the right thing might be painful. You might look at this guy is not guilty, but I mean, a judge has taken a decision, and you're going to have problems if you challenge that, unless you do it within the right line of procedure.
Okay.
Okay, Edward, let's look at some of the unique stories that you have covered. I think most recent and most interesting right now is the two MPs who have been behind bars for a year now, and they keep pushing them back and forth, for political reasons, whatever reasons they are, in terms of judiciary and the uniqueness of this story. What has it been like for you to actually script it, decipher it, and then be able to draw the difference between the politicking and the judiciary of it?
Yeah, you know, I think the challenge that our justice system faces is the infringement on its independence by the executive. And that happens so much when you look at most of the, I don't want to mention about that case of the two, because it's before a court of law, but you know, the judiciary, much as it should be independent, most times it's not, and you clearly can see it in many of the cases. So like I said in the previous, answering the previous question, you have to be a professional journalist, look at the facts and report them as they are. Sometimes you might not indulge yourself into the politics that there is, because that has consequences. You're a journalist, you're not a judge. So you have to give room to the judge to make the decision. But of course, sometimes it's unfortunate that you have to look at things and you have an opinion, but then you can't express it. in a story, because you're a professional person, you're doing your work professionally, and you have to leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Before COVID-19, through COVID-19, one of the cries of the judiciary system was the fact that they had minimal judges to handle the cases, and that was leading to a lot of backlog, something that is slowly being addressed. We've seen the appointment of judges in different parts and them being relocated to different parts of the country. However, I've seen Justice Wutera every time he's been, overseeing a training of these judges. One of the things that he's talked about is, of course, the case backlog and how to address it, but also the favoritism that is before court in terms of the judge and the case. If the case has one of the people having money to influence the decision or having power to influence the decision, it has always gone in favor of the one who's the stronger of the two in terms of either money or power or position than the one, yet the actual case, states differently. So how is that actually being addressed over the judicial system countrywide?
No, I think the enactment of the Administration of the Judiciary Act that was passed in 2020, I think, has brought about some reforms that are really important, because now at least you can see that the judiciary is a bit independent. They doesn't have to rely on its budgeting is independent. You get the money, and a lot of things have changed. And so your question is I don't know how to say it, but the independence of the judiciary, like I said, is still dependent on the executive, and these things, until the money is there to deal with them entirely, then you can have a truly independent judiciary. But talking about the internal initiatives, like you heard of ECMIS, that the judiciary is putting in place, the electronic court case management system that will be, you will be able to monitor and follow these cases, that is expected to deal with those, because then you would have to limit physical interactions between the persons
and the clerks,
who are in the case, and the number of cases, because that the budgeting, the heightened budgeting of the judiciary means that then you're going to increase presence across the country. If you are in, let's say, Kumi, and you are in what is the farthest district, Karenga, if you have a court there, it's going to be easy for you to move to a court and be heard without necessarily having to have all these middle people that tend to disadvantage our people by extorting money from them and stuff like that. So I think there are initiatives, but of course more needs to be done. And I've said this, the adjustments that are being made in the judiciary alone cannot bring about change, except if you do the same in these other, complementary sectors, like the police, which is supposed to investigate, and then you have the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, which is severely, underfunded and understaffed. So if you have someone, the reason why you're going to have an MP like Sewanyana and Segirinya on remand for this long is because, the police is not investigating, or the Director of Public Prosecution cannot sanction the file, and that goes back to us, the people. So I think those are the things that need to be looked at entirely in the justice, law and order sector.
All right, Mr. Muhumuza, I would be remiss if I do not bring this home There are many journalists right now who are battling court cases, who are seeking compensation for some of the justices meted against them by the security forces. Some of them are even in the courts of law against their employers for aspects including a non-payment of their wages. How do you cover these ones? Or we are more very flexible and quick at covering anybody else and giving very little attention to our own? Very quickly, within a minute.
No, I think we do cover them, but like I said, you know, justice, it's a long process.
Yeah.
We do cover such stories and we're passionate about them, but you have still to go through the procedures, and I think we've covered, I personally have covered a lot of stories concerning that. We are lucky that, you know, in Uganda we are not the same. Media houses are not the same. If I'm lucky to be working with NTV, there's somebody else who's working with a media house that might not offer the amenities and the privileges that NTV offers. So we're not the same. And these issues have to be dealt with in terms of policy, because things like minimum wage, things like, which things take long to happen here in Uganda. And like I said in the beginning, it's every challenges that we go through are hinged on the behavior of the executive to bring about these policies in parliament so that they are enacted, and then we can enjoy what we do.
All right. Thank you very much. Edward Muhumuza is a reporter with Nation Media Group, and of course sitting at NTV doing justice to the reporting of justice stories. Many thanks for your perspectives and insight. Time now for a short break, but do stay with us. Morning at NTV continues. That's the hashtag on Twitter. Be part of everything else that goes on here, including the discussions. We'll be glad to hear from you in terms of your feedback on what you think can be improved.